there's no real theme to this vlog. We are going to be reading my nonfiction pick of the month. Maybe is this a nonfiction reading vlog? I'm still not sure about the brightness. I did adjust it, so let me know if y'all think this is too bright and I can fix it for the next vlog. But we are going to go through the weekly TBR. Not going to be able to get to my short story collection today, as I typically am busy on Monday and can't get to it. But that is Here Be Icebergs by Katia Adai. This one is about family, but making it a little uncanny valley. Next, we had the book that is going to be our main focus of the vlog, and that is Lotharingia by Simon Winder, a personal history of Europe's lost country. And I will be reading this physically because it's no longer free on Audible. One of y'all told me I need to be careful with that, seeing which books are free because they don't always stay free. You were right. But let's see what this one is about. At the heart of Western Europe lies a huge swath of land stretching from the mud and fogs of the North Sea coast down through countless market towns, ports, fortresses, and ancient cathedrals, through a mass of river systems and forests, all the way to the Great Barrier of the Alps. Divided by their language, religions, and frontiers, everyone living there shares one thing, that they are inhabitants of the lost part of Europe, Lotharingia. In this highly entertaining new book, Simon Winder tells the story of this ghostly but persistent presence. In AD 843, the three surviving grandsons of the great Emperor Charlemagne met at Verdun after years of bitter squabbles over who would inherit the family land. They finally decided to divide the territory and go their separate ways. In a moment of staggering significance, one grandson inherited what became France, another Germany, and the third Lotharingia. The chunk that initially divided the other two chunks, the lands of Lothar. The dynamic between those three great zones has dictated much of our subsequent. Lotharingia is a history of this in-between land and joins the equally fascinating Germania and Danubia in Simon Winder's personal exploration of Europe. And this beguiling, that's not right, hilarious and compelling book, we retrace how both from west and from east, any number of ambitious characters have tried and failed to grapple with these people. Over many centuries, not only has Lotharingia brought forth many of Europe's greatest artists, inventors, and thinkers, but it has also reduced many a would-be conqueror to helpless tears of rage and frustration. That's what I'm going to be starting today. My mood read is the Pisces by Melissa Broder. I am about a third into this book. I started it yesterday. In this one, we have Lucy, who she's a librarian. She's been working on her thesis for or her dissertation on Sappho for 9 years. And she has a dramatic breakup with this man she's had a relationship for again, like 10 years. They break up and her sister's like, you need to get out of Phoenix. You need to come to LA, house sit, dog sit for me while I'm in Europe for the summer. That is what Lucy ends up doing. She starts going to therapy, is trying to just find herself after this breakup. And her sister lives in what they call it's like Silicon Beach, basically. It's Venice Beach, there's a big divide. It's like if you've moved there in the last 10 years, you're either homeless or you're like in the tech world and live beachfront in a glass mansion. So that is where she's living, in her sister's glass mansion. She goes to the beach at night and comes across this swimmer who, he's just like very understanding and very eerily attractive. And she only ever sees him at the beach. We will have to see where this goes because it is magical realism. It was listed as fantasy when I got it, but that's that one. And then my ebook is the one that I've been reading forever. This is Home by Marilyn Robinson. We have these two adult children who have gone back home. One is taking care of their elderly father, and the other is trying to right wrongs that he has made. And those are the books that I am currently reading and plan to read this week. I know this isn't a bird vlog, but there's a couple of cardinals sitting on my fence, the male and the female. I love it. Cardinals are spiritual to me, but they're my favorite bird. I'm here to do my update on Lotharingia. I got to 10%. It should take me 10 days to read this book. It's a lot to take in, not gonna lie to you. It's a lot, and very like sporadic with how it is written, but let's go over the notes. First, we had the introduction, which I am somebody who I always read the introduction. Sometimes I get scared that's going to be spoilery, even for nonfiction, but I do read it. This part of Europe has just been a battleground going back to the days of the Gallic Wars with Julius Caesar all the way up to World War II. Just blood, bodies, they're everywhere in that ground. And just we're seeing just such petty reasons why borders are the way that they are. Politics, wars, just some spots in the 1800s people just didn't care about. They're like, we don't need that. And so that's just the way these lines are drawn is super interesting, even if the cultures are so similar between countries. Interesting. But then we get to chapter 1, which is the only chapter that I read. We don't know the majority of Northwestern European history. We don't, of what came before the Ice Age. And then with writing, and being literate, we didn't really get it in this region until the Romans invaded. The author talks about that's so crazy to think about, but for the majority of humanity, writing and reading hasn't existed. For some reason, we feel like we have to have that, even though for the majority of humanity, we haven't had it. And I'm not saying I'm against reading and writing, because obviously that's my passion. That's, you see writing, reading, that's what I do all day. It's just something to think about. And how this section of history, Northwestern European history, is really boring compared to other parts of the world at the same time period. We see the people crossing the Bering Strait going to like repopulate North America. We also have people going to Madagascar, and that's very interesting, the Oceania area, of just how all that populating happened, because it's massive swaths of water, rough water. How are these places, I don't want to say countries, were able to be populated? The writing style is rather humorous and witty, because we had this one part where Kaiser Wilhelm II, he's going to this Roman fort and he's wanting to bring it back to its glory, you know, restore it. He's looking out, feeling like he's a Roman general, but this fort was to go against his ancestors, Germans. So I thought that was funny, and then the author did point it out himself. This is definitely like a travel book, as we're just seeing different places and at these old historical sites, what is there now, what's in their museums. And we see the author's own personal experiences as well. Of he's talked about his history with the country and his like personal relationship with the country of France, as he is an Englishman. But we are seeing just bits of his travels and everything included. The Rule of Saints was my favorite section in part 1, if you can believe it or not, or in chapter 1. We have Felix and Regulus, who were Thebians. They go to Lake Geneva, and I think they eventually might have gone to Zurich, but they die. They get beheaded. That doesn't kill them. They carry their heads, they pray, and then they die. I thought that was fascinating. We also have Saint Ursula, who apparently was killed with 11,000 other virgins, which there's just a lot of theories on what that translation, it was really 11,000, and this was Ursula even a real person, and was this just all just a story, a myth made about finding a Roman burial pit that could have been from a battle, or it could have been a plague pit. That was the word, and I've never heard that word, and this, I thought this was really funny. Lotharingia becomes a place because of Charlemagne, because of his descendants and successors. But Charlemagne, if you don't know, was referred to as the Holy Roman Emperor. He saw himself as a Roman emperor. At this time, the Eastern Roman Empire still exists. We have Empress, I think, Irene, who is in power over there, but a lot of people don't see her as legit because she's a woman. But her successors in the Eastern Roman Empire, they see Charlemagne and his successors as a barbarian goon show, basically. And that is how I feel looking. I don't consider Charlemagne and all of them to be Roman emperors. I don't. But I also don't really associate with the Eastern, I'm pointing towards the West, I don't associate with the Eastern Roman Empire. I don't. Rome fell when the Western Roman Empire fell. When like the Ostrogoths and Visigoths, all those people, when they came in, that's when Rome ended. Those people in the East, they're irrelevant to me. I will eventually probably get into that, but I haven't got to that stage yet. None of these people who were claiming to be Rome and the successor of the Roman Empire, no, you're not. And then I didn't know this was what this ended on, this chapter, is that Charlemagne was dealing with, quote, Northmen, which were the Saxons. Charlemagne was Christian, if you weren't aware, and at this time we are seeing a lot of this area going from paganism to Christianity. We have in Saxony a lot of Frankish missionaries trying to convert the people. But you know, we know what's coming. Vikings are coming. But yeah, I had no idea that Charlemagne was having beef with Northmen. I didn't know about that, so that was interesting. I do remember learning about Charlemagne in my world history class in middle school, which that class is where I learned so much about things that I find so interesting, and I'm so thankful for that class. That was 7th grade, I'm pretty sure. And then we had another like world history class in like 9th and 10th grade, but I'm talking about my middle school one. The middle school one was really good. I did love my others, but that was the one where I was just introduced to so much of history, and I think really fell in love with history. So that's all for the introduction and chapter 1 in Lotharingia. That's funny. But I'm here to talk about Lotharingia. I read 36 pages today, so not as much as I read yesterday. I got to 17%. We are going to go through the notes because I still took like a page of notes. We started today in chapter 2 and we got part of the way into chapter 3. Also, this is one of those books where ink is getting on my thumbs and not my fingers. I don't know. The first note is the author is very humble. He's like, this is a crazy book. This isn't a great book. Like, he's saying that multiple times and I'm like, dude, just get on with it. But like, he's very humble and the writing style is very casual. No, I am kind of scared because we're just getting like, you know, just sporadic bits of just things that he found interesting in this place. I don't know how well it's going to stick. But knowing my memory, I am going to remember it, but still there is this me being scared that it's not going to stick completely. And something I found interesting, so I don't remember if it was the 1900s or the 19th century, so do be aware of that. But a lot of times when they were, that time period, they were very fascinated by the Romans. And really not for good reason, but they were fascinated by the Romans. So in these towns, a lot of medieval towns were built on top of what were once Roman towns, and that's just how it goes. Like, there are really interesting buildings in like Constantinople, what am I saying, in Istanbul and in Rome, of where you can see the building, the different layers of the building, because it's all different parts of history. In this time period, people were really one of the Romans where they were throwing out the medieval and Frankish pieces of history, and we don't have them. But also in other instances where we had archaeologists that were looking for one thing and they found all this other stuff, so that's why we do have some info that we do have. But yeah, they were just throwing out bits of history, and that is crazy. Another thing is that defense has always been one of the biggest costs for communities, countries, whatever, but I thought that was interesting. Like, why is it so expensive? Because it is like a necessity, you have to have it, but that's when I'm like, money's a man-made construct, and I want to go read Sapiens again. I'm not really like about to go reread that, but I do think about that book. And the author talks about how with historians, obviously we don't want to generalize all historians, but they never look at periods of peace. They are always looking at periods of conflict. And I'm thinking of things that I want to write myself. And we can look at the Roman Empire time. I'm like, I want to write about when we start to have the different invasions on Rome. That's what I really want to write. And then like eventually like a Lombard invasion as well. And I'm like, why am I never wanting to write just an everyday like slice of life when all things are good, Pax Romana, you know, like, why am I not wanting to write that? Like, why are we excited by chaotic times? I think we are, because that is what history gives us. If in movies and whatnot, there's, okay, war movies are one of my most watched like genres. Thank you, Ridley Scott. I think it's because we see all of that, and that's why we're like, oh, that's fascinating. We never think of just the everyday average life of a Roman citizen or just any, you know, era in history. And now I'm like, I need to find a time period and come up with a story when things are at peace. Maybe I need to do that. Next we have Christian Europe was a small place. And now just thinking about like Christianity, and I feel like it's not the largest religion in the world, but it's so, I don't want to say in your face. I feel like that's kind of rude. But where I live in the Bible Belt, so I see it all the time. I have a church over there, like they're everywhere. Even further down there are churches everywhere. So it's just so hard to imagine a Europe where it was so little, because at this time we are having this part of Europe where Christianity is be attacked by Muslims trying to expand into Europe in France and Spain. Sicily too, do we want to include that? I didn't say that in there, but that's irrelevant for where we're talking. And then we also have pagans like the Vikings who are wanting to invade this Christian territory of the Holy Roman Empire, who are coming down, these Northmen that are pagans. It's really interesting to see, and I'm like, oh, I was about to be kind of like, I feel like the evangelicals always like to play victim. And I say this as a Christian, that a lot of evangelicals are always wanting to be the victim. And I'm like, wow, does it stem back to back then? I don't know. Then Gisela of Swabia, that I'm probably pronouncing both names wrong, but when I was talking about these archaeologists who were going down into these like underneath the churches, it wasn't catacombs, but just going underneath crypts kind of where people were buried. And Gisela of Swabia was mummified, and I just want to kind of look into that and see what her story was. Next we have the First Crusade. That was, the Crusades were a big talking point in what I read today. I knew that Jewish people were being killed in the Crusades. We have the Jewish people and we have Muslim people or Islamic people in the Middle East, where there's chaos all the time because of religion. In the Crusades, we had the Christians who are going over there. It's not just Muslims that they are killing. They are also killing Jewish people, but not only in the Middle East, in like Worms. Again, I could be mispronouncing that town. They killed, what we have record of, who knows how factual it is, 800 Jewish people. And if you see these Jewish cemeteries in these European cities, that's really when there's just a big, like, there's a lot of bodies. I did not know that Jewish people in Europe were being killed. I knew in the Middle East they were by the Crusaders. I did not know it was happening in their actual communities in what is like France and Germany today, Belgium. I did not know that was happening. You learn something new. And I'm just thinking about teams who are called Crusaders. I'm like, y'all really want to be called that? Like, yeah, that's crazy. But it was like, yeah, those guys who were killing all the Jewish people got karma by being sold. Some were sold into slavery in the Balkans, and others were, when they rushed into the Asian side of Constantinople, were killed by Turks. And I was just like, whoa. Next, the Cistercian, definitely pronouncing that wrong, but these are monks, and they would never talk. And I was amazed by this. These monasteries, that's the word, were like silent. And if there had to be communication done, they talked with like hand motions, but if verbal communication had to be done, they would go to the auditorium. That's where the word comes from, apparently. That's at least how he made it seem. They would go to the auditorium, but the only time there was spoken word was singing and prayers. That was the only time, just silence. And all this, and they did manual labor as well. It was all preparatory to be monks in the afterlife. Never knew about that. And then the next point, this is in chapter 3, was Hildegard von Bingen. Again, could be mispronouncing, most likely am. And I swear I saw a TikTok about her recently. It might have even been on Emily Bledsoe Holloway's page, of this woman back in whenever, in the Middle Ages, was having these visions. And she was the 10th child, and when things are done in tenths, they get given to the church in the Middle Ages. So her family gave her to the church, and they, like, she would be in confinement, and then she, where are the nuns? We talked about monasteries. Like, she had an abbey of her own, and then they wore like really lavish veils and coronets, I think is the word. But she had all these visions that are just so like fantastical and like going into space, and it's crazy. Like, it talked about she made her own alphabet, and I think I heard about her from Emily Bledsoe, but it might have been another, and it might not even be this woman. There might be somebody else, but Pope, the German Pope, who was Pope when this book was published back in like the 2010s, he was the one to make her a saint. But I have to look up that TikTok because that is crazy, because I'm like, oh my gosh, everything comes around. And that's the update on Lotharingia. Happy Wednesday. I'm gonna be honest, I only have 3 notes, and I got to chapter 4. The cardinals are out there. That's a reassuring sign to the world. But when I was in the middle of reading, I looked down and noticed I have a rash on my arm, and it doesn't hurt, itch, anything like that. And I was just like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So obviously I went to Dr. Google, and I'm like, I'm dying. When it's like, no, it's most likely just from the strap, because it is like the print kind of the strap of my tank top. And then I was kind of laying, like, I definitely lean more on that, like I was kind of leaning on that side, so it makes sense that the strap was rubbing up on there. Also, my swimsuit, my like one-piece swimsuit, is definitely a size too small and very tight in the shoulder and bust area, but I would think that would have caused it on both sides. But I didn't notice it like till I started, and I went and looked at pictures and videos that I filmed earlier, and it wasn't there. So it happened just when I was reading. So I do think just the strap of my tank top was rubbing up on it, but I'm like, please don't let me die. Knock on wood. I'm not ready. So there's that. I just cleaned it off with like alcohol, and we are going to hope for the best that it starts to fade. It doesn't look as red as it did earlier, but still, I've never had anything like that, so that is low-key freaking me out. But let's go into the reading update, because I am now a quarter of the way into the book at 27%. And we get, so Switzerland, a lot of Switzerland is in Lotharingia. I am the only person in my family, and like my immediate family, that has not been to Switzerland. I can't talk too much for it since I haven't been there, but that country's history, like, I'm like, who were y'all? What were y'all a part of? Who was ruling Switzerland? And we do get some like Swiss history today of like the mountain men and everything, very fascinating. But it became really a trading post, because the city of Bern, B-E-R-N, wasn't only as a place. We had somebody who was like, we're clearing this forest and putting a town there, and that is the present day city of Bern. And therefore all that cleaning of land and, you know, I forget what that's called, rearranging the land, basically made it where it was easier to go from Northern Europe into Italy. So therefore Switzerland got really rich because it's on the trading route of Northern Europe going down into Italy. I never thought about that, but that does make so much sense. Next, I just kind of like this quote about when you go to these historical places, but really it's anywhere on earth because there was only somebody there before you, and it is being merely the latest character to trot through town. I want to know if you guys have been anywhere where you just like can feel the history. My grandmother got that feeling at Gettysburg. She said it was just like a very eerie feeling being there, and I have gotten eerie feelings at places, but not really, that's not what I'm talking about. Like at Westminster Abbey, you're not allowed to take pictures or anything. I think it has to be like professional events for that. So the normal everyday person like me can't do that. But it just felt walking there like a heaviness, walking through Westminster Abbey and going around the grounds there. And to me, that is feeling the history of a place. And the last note is from 1315 to 1420, so much bad stuff was happening. We have famine, which is kind of rare for Western Europe. It hasn't happened too many times in history, but in this time period it did. We also have the bubonic plague, and it's guessed that half of Europe died from the bubonic plague. Now, it was worse in the Mediterranean rather than this Germanic area, Franco area, I guess I should say as well. But still, that it says even putting World War I and World War II together is like the closest you can get to that amount of death in Europe. Crazy, and I cannot wait to read some plague novels. And the last thing was flooding. Tens of thousands of people died in these floods in the present day Netherlands. Crazy to me. And so that's when a lot of like the word is dikes only is in history class. Like the history teacher was like, that's really the word, and I'm like, I didn't know what that meant back then. But yeah, those were put into place and are still used to this day. The like most recent, at the time of this publication, like bad flooding where a lot of people died was in the 1950s. But tens of thousands of people dying in a flood, to me that is just so unheard of and so crazy. So that is my nightly update. Hopefully I will be here later to update the vlog on the Pisces. I should be getting around the halfway point in that book. But yeah, prayers for my armpit. Wow, it looked kind of dark before I turned the light on. Of course, that's why we have lights. But I got to over the halfway point in the Pisces. We are going to talk about my thoughts. I am alive, but let's go through these thoughts. The dog better not die. Our main character of Lucy can be kind of reckless, maybe forgetful, distracted would be the word I would use. He better not die. He better not die. That's not why I came here. But this book is so vulgar. On the description it says it's very frank, and that is definitely true. It's blunt. This author does not hold back. This is the second book, excuse me, that I've read by Melissa Broder. She doesn't hold back. It's extremely vulgar. So if you do not like vulgar, like sexual comments, like if that makes you uncomfortable and you don't want to read it, don't read anything by this author. Don't. But it's just so laugh out loud funny because how like outrageous it is when I'm reading it. I'm like, what? Who thinks of this? Like, who thinks to write this and just openly sharing it? And the author is narrating the audiobook, and I'm like, it's because nobody else was confident enough to do that. It's just so out there where I'm like, what? But it's so funny and makes me laugh out loud. But also, if you like new age stuff, which you can probably see some of my stuff over here, that I'm into new age. And then we also have like, if you like classical stuff, because she is writing her, what is it, dissertation, is that what it's called? Yeah, on Sappho. So there's a lot of references to like Greek myth and ancient mythology. So I'm really into both of those things, and seeing them come together, I'm like, yes, it was made for me. Hearing of Theo. So Theo is the guy who she is meeting up with at the rocks, the mysterious swimmer. She has just found out who he is, like who he really is. And I'm just so curious, like, is this legit happening? Because this is a magical realism book. I had it listed on Goodreads as a fantasy. In my mind, that's like, yeah, this is straight up what is happening. But at the same time, I'm like, what if he's like a figment of her imagination? Because she is unwell. She's mentally ill. She's going through stuff. Like, she's going through it. And I'm wondering if maybe this is just all some kind of like psychosis. Is that the word? I think she might even be wondering that herself. But also, if you're somebody who loves like tea, and if you don't know what that means, because it's slang, gossip, if you like hearing about other people's lives, if you're nosy, I think you'll like this book, because she does go to these like group therapy sessions, and all these women are just talking about their love lives and struggles they're having with it. And I eat that stuff up. I am so nosy and love reading that kind of stuff. Like when there's drama on Facebook and it's like people I don't know, but they're people who live in my community, I'm like, get the popcorn, get the popcorn. This is going to be good. Get the tea. Like, it's a good time. So I love reading about like people's personal lives and just the intricacies of that and just kinks and everything that people have, where I'm just like, whoa, y'all are crazy, but at least you're trying to get help out here. We appreciate that these women are trying to get help and going to therapy and talking out their problems. That's important. So I love to read that though. So yes, I am loving this book. It's great. Definitely like 4-star category. This isn't an all-time favorite or anything, but I am very much enjoying my time came from. My head, obviously. It's time to talk about Lotharingia for the night. I only have 2 notes. I have started skimming at this point because when I get to 25%, and I know it's going to be like 3 or below, that we start skimming. My first note is from chapter 5, how in French history they did not really use their coast that much in our medieval time period, because Burgundians, I guess that's how you call people from Burgundy, they had coastline, and the Bretons, which is Brittany, had coastlines, but the French never really utilized it. A lot of what they were doing was just more inland, and that's kind of crazy because if you look at France on a map, it has the Mediterranean and then the English Channel up there, but they just really weren't utilizing it. And I think that, to me, that's very rare, because water is just, a lot of times civilization builds around water. Sure, Paris is on a river and these towns are on like rivers and things, but they never really use their coast, which is interesting. The Dutch, complete opposite. Amsterdam, they first started out with a lot of fishing. We're in herring, I think. Yeah, I think it's herring. Filling those with like spices and everything. But now we have, speaking of spices, getting to the age of exploration, I think is what that era is called, of going to the Americas, going into Africa, they've been to the Near East and India, where they are, we're at that era. So a lot of that is going to Amsterdam. Speaking of, we're at the time of Protestants versus Catholics, if we will. That is going on. We had a lot of Margaret of York mentioned today and all her little like step descendants. This book is ultimately just like throwing spaghetti at the wall. We're just very sporadic and just little instances of history, like 5 pages of something, then go on to the next thing. And to me, that's just not very in-depth. It's very surface level, and I'm somebody who I want a lot more detail. So I think if you are wanting to travel here, just know more about this place, but at a very casual level, it's for you. But let's do the weekly wrap up. I have not read over 100 pages any day this week, but I most definitely will this week, and I will put it at the bottom, maybe. It depends when I edit the video, because I've read 90 pages so far today, and then all the other days this week I read around 90 pages. So today has been the day that I have read the most. I did not haul any books this week. Did I complete any books? I completed my ebook, which is Home. That book made me feel really dumb. If you want a vocabulary lesson, read that book on Kindle and you will learn a lot. But there's a lot of wisdom in that book, and I am going to save it to read at a later stage in my life, because I do think there's a lot to be learned, but just right now wasn't the right time for me to read that. Yeah, Marilyn Robinson, very intelligent and wise person. You can just tell by her books. Next week's vlog is going to be the reset. We will most likely still be reading this, but if we're not, we're going to be reading the Pisces, or going into my next mood read, which will be one of those books on this top part up here. Not sure which one yet. Don't want to do any spoilers, so you know, have a little surprise for y'all if that happens, if we get to that. But yes, we will be preparing for a new month of reading in May. Flowers is what May is about. Contemporary literary fiction, which is my favorite genre at the moment. That is what May is all about. But I am gonna have a prayer request at the end of the video here, because the day that this video goes, the day before this video goes live, I'm doing something that is very hard, but that is just going to be very different for me, something out of my comfort zone. This was the first like adulting thing I did on my own. Like, yes, I did go through all the stuff you go through after somebody dies last year, but this was like my first decision where I made it on my own, because you know, when somebody dies, that's the law, the government's forcing you to do all of that. When this decision is the first one I made on my own, and it's Friday is going to be the day that it all happens. So it is just going to be kind of scary at first, because again, this is like the first decision I've made for myself, and for my family, but it's going to be something positive. There's going to be a positive outcome from this, but it's just the anxiety going into it, being like, oh my gosh, it's happening. So I'm just praying, or asking y'all, I'm praying as well, for peace and comfort. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you made it all the way through, leave a rain drop emoji in the comments below, because April showers. That's why we're doing rain. But as always, comment, rate, and subscribe. And if you made it through this whole video, ring that, well, I messed up, but ring that notification bell to be notified when all my videos go live. And I'll see you in my next one. Bye!